The next voice from our community is Cynthia Lindenmeyer. Cynthia is currently the part-time associate pastor here at First United Methodist Church. She served as a pastor in both UCC and UMC congregations, as a military chaplain, and associate pastor at her alma mater, the United States Military Academy. 2 periods of homelessness were instrumental in shaping Cynthia's career path. Thank you, Cynthia.
All right, thanks, Carol. I didn't want to pass out any handouts because I kind of help out the ecological team. We're very aware of paper. Soon as the last 2 presenters talked about, I have a doctorate, it's a doctorate in ministry, but if you ask my kids what I did, my 15-year-old daughter, she'll tell you she thinks I'm an air marshal. I am not. And my son will tell you that I'm a dance instructor, which actually at this time, every Saturday from 9:30 to 10:30, I'm usually teaching Zumba at the SRPY. So I'm thankful for someone subbing my class this morning. And you're welcome to join us here Wednesday nights yes, I'm shameless. Wednesday nights here, we'd love to have you guys for Zumba. But yes, my name is Cynthia, and I am a part-time associate pastor, which is really an oxymoron because no minister can be part-time. So I am here. And if you all just kind of do this as a mental exercise, but if I asked you to write down 5 names of people that you would call an emergency, who would those 5 people be? For those of you who are parents, you actually have to do this for real when you enroll your kids in school. And then if I asked you to write down 5 people who are in your family or who are like family to you, probably some of the same people, you could do that. But if I asked you to write down 5 people you know who are homeless, could you do that? Could you share the stories of 5 homeless people? That's okay if you can't, because honestly, right now, I would struggle to do that myself. I'll help you out with this one because once I talk, you can write my name down. I think it's important to know people's stories. Frederick Buechner is a favorite theologian, preacher of mine, and he says that when we lose people's stories, when we don't engage and understand where people come from, then we become impoverished, not just only at the human level, but a very deep geographical part of the soul. We lose track of our spirituality. And we get inundated with statistics. And we heard a lot this morning. They're on all the brochures. And I remember one time in seminary, a professor of mine, he was making a point. He talked about how many had died from AIDS in Africa. And I guess our class didn't even flinch at the number. And so what he did in his next sentence is he said the F word in a sentence. And of course, we all got up in arms. And I remember that lesson because I'm like, I can't believe I wasn't bothered by the fact that 2 million people died, but I'm more upset about the use of profanity in a seminary class. And I think we become so numb to these numbers and statistics. And if it just means getting involved with one person, that's a start. And I'm going to kind of tell you about what it was like to be on the other side of things. Now keep in mind, what I try to do is if you think about childhood experience, and I always go with A Christmas Story, you have Ralphie, and what's so brilliant about that film or book is that he's telling it from I think Ralphie's 11 or 12 in the movie, but he's able to kind of frame it as an adult. And I'll try to do that, and I kind of go back and forth, because this is really probably the 3rd or 4th time I talked about this. There are certain things in our lives we don't like talking about. And I say this is something that isn't the best, and so what I try to do is remember the good parts, which I don't want homelessness to sound like it's fun, because it sure wasn't. But my mother and I lived on the streets of Austin, Texas, age 14. And if you know what a 14-year-old is like, I can't imagine having my daughter, who's 15 now, and her being homeless, because she would drive me more crazy than she already does. And I'm sure I was not very helpful for my mom. The biggest thing, I think, is being homeless is you feel different, and you are different. in April, I had the chance to chaperone my son's 5th grade class, the Henry Doorly Zoo. And it was raining, it was a cold, wet, miserable day, and we, for whatever reason, gathered to eat lunch in the gorilla exhibit. And the gorillas, they're eating their carrots, the kids think that's just really cool, but the gorillas could care less about the kids. They're exchanging their Lunchable desserts, the Skittles for the extra cheddar goldfish. And the next day, nothing eventful happened, but it was the next day, if you all remember when, what's his name, Kyoto, the big silverback gorilla, he charged the glass and cracked it. We missed that by one day. And when we were eating lunch with the kids, I was thinking about the gorillas and the divide. And then the next day when I heard that story, I was like, I wonder what made him charge that glass and that plexiglass. And that's what it was kind of like being homeless, is there was this divide, there was this plexiglass, and as a homeless person, there was this unwritten rule that you couldn't go up to people. If they wanted to initiate contact, they had to come up to you. But so many times, I wanted to go up and just charge the glass of the people around me and say, hey, life kind of sucks right here. I know you're drinking your coffee and you're going about your life, but can you help me out here? But that just doesn't happen. One of the nights I remember, we were in Austin. My mom had a friend that taught at the University of Texas, and I don't know how it worked out, but she gave me an ID card so I could go into the libraries where I hung out, and I guess the D section must have been a cool section because I read a lot of Dickens, Dostoevsky, and Dumas. And I remember one night I'm coming back home. Our little shanty village was by the Frank Erwin Center, which is like where they play basketball and all that. And I think there was a concert that night. And this white limo was kind of going down the wrong way, and it made this well, it wasn't a U-turn, it was more like a 10-point turn. And the window rolled down, and I could see inside, and I thought it was really cool. There was like a bar in there, and they had a TV, and they had a phone, not a cell phone, but, one of those rotary phones. I thought that was pretty cool. They asked for directions. And then the window went back up, and I remember feeling that emanating from that car was this feeling of despair. And so about 10 feet from the little shanty village, I hear laughter, and that was my community. And I loved my community. We all took care of each other. I never watched the TV show Friends, but kind of remember, I know the song, the theme song is everyone knew your name, everyone knew your story. We shared that. And one of the guys that was like our tribal leader was Lenny. He was a football player. I'm not sure exactly what happened, but he had lost everything. He was living on the streets. And I remember, I could tell you countless stories of usually women who are walking in the streets and guys are heckling them, and Lenny gets involved. The guys don't heckle anymore. I remember one time a woman, older woman, she's carrying her purse, and this is in Texas, right? So women carry big purses. And this guy runs up, tries to get her purse, grabs it, he's going, and good old Lenny, he must have been like a defensive tackle or something, because he tackles her, or not her, or him, gives the purse back. And Lenny just kind of looked out for us, and each person kind of had their role. I don't know what my role was. Sometimes I would tell the stories that I was reading from the books, and I would abridge it. Everyone always loved, though, The Count of Monte Cristo, and that was always my favorite book as well, because it tells a story of someone who had their life going, which a lot of them did, and then something happened to them, and in that story, it's people wanting just to take someone down. It's injustice, going to jail, escaping from jail, finding this treasure, and this isn't very biblical, but he uses the treasure to take back revenge. And that's not a good part. But the good part of the story is that there is hope that this feeling of being in prison will not last forever. So my mom and I, living on the streets, I can tell you some good things. We talked about food stamps. I always thought it was kind of cool to organize the stickers in the food stamp book. I was supposed to be, at that time, in 9th grade. I wasn't in school. I thought it was kind of cool. I wasn't in school. I didn't have to worry about fashion designs because I only had like 3 pairs of clothes. And I had my Sony Walkman, which I still have to this day, and I'd listen to my music, and I was in my own little world. And really, people just didn't bother me that much. I would hold, now I guess a panhandler. I guess I was one, but it was for real, because I would hold up signs. But the main way I got money, I was very good at a game called Galaga at the arcade. I don't know if y'all remember that. You had Miss Pac-Man, you had Pac-Man, you had the caterpillar one, you had the little frog trying to get to the other side, but my game was Galaga. And the UT students, they would see this, 14-year-old kid, they think, oh, maybe I looked a little older, and I bet them, I said, hey, I'll bet you $5 I could beat you at this game. Well, I won quite a bit doing that, so I guess I was kind of a con artist in my own sense, but it worked, and to this day, I bet you I could beat anyone, because I have the game memorized pretty well. We lived and slept in laundromats to this day. Whenever I pass a laundromat, I wonder if there's anyone sleeping there. We lived underneath the I-35 overpass. To this day, anytime I go under an overpass, I look to see if someone could be living there. To this day, if I see a puddle of water and I'm walking, I know to walk all the way around, because if you've ever been splashed by a car, by a puddle of water, you're never going to do that again. And I don't know if people in Austin just thought it was fun, but they did that to our group quite a bit. There was a pothole that never got filled. We would buy kitty litter and fill it, and it just would dissipate. So I do remember the good parts, and the relationships. I think that was the best community I've ever been a part of. I don't have the best relationship with my parents. I don't have the best relationship with aunts and uncles. I mean, they're there, they're great people, but when you kind of relocate and move a lot, you don't form those relationships. So eventually what happened, probably wondering why were we homeless? The reason why we were homeless kind of goes back. Let me go back to the civil rights movement. Civil rights movement, segregation, was over in 1964. I was born in Birmingham, Alabama, 1967. I know y'all can do the math, how old I am. Trying to be proud of it. And even though segregation in 64, it really didn't. And I don't remember the signs that said white and colored. And a lot of times we think about colored as just being black people, but colored meant Asian and Hispanic people as well. Now, I'm Chicana, and if you don't know what that term means, that's okay, because it's one of those terms that doesn't get used much. Our government decides to kind of block all people as Hispanic. If you spoke Spanish and you were from Mexico or something, you're Hispanic. Well, Chicanos were the folks that left Mexico, were kind of looked down upon, and settled in mainly Houston or Los Angeles. And it was kind of meant to be a derogatory name, but like Methodist, we tried to embrace it and be proud of it. It's kind of funny if you think about it. You have Mexican Americans, and I mean, how many Mexican Americans have really been to Mexico? How many African Americans have really been to Africa? I mean, it's crazy, but their labels will go with it. So anyway, Chicanos were to Birmingham, Alabama. My dad teaches at University of Alabama, Birmingham, and he's in part of a civil rights movement called La Raza. Now, La Raza stands for the race. And it's an organization that tries to, it's a civil rights movement organization, really, that tries to be vocal and speak out. Well, we ended up moving to Boulder, Colorado in 1972. In 1972, my dad starts up an organization there. He teaches psychology. He eventually got tenure there. And one of the members on the regent board wanted to do away with these civil rights movement groups. Black Student Union didn't want that. The Democratic students wanted to do away with that. And of course, wanted to do away with La Raza. Well, if I told you the name of this regent person, you probably don't know him personally, but you will know his company. And when my dad refused to disband La Raza, I have no evidence to support this, but the timing of it was very interesting. When my dad stood up to Joe Coors, my whole family, everything fell apart. I don't remember exactly what happened. I do remember some folks came to our house, and I remember our family having to flee to Canada, where we lived for a few months. When we came back to Boulder, my parents divorced. Everything for me as a kid changed. I moved to Houston with my mom, lived with my grandparents, 5th and 6th grade. My mom got an apartment, and everything was fine in 7th and 8th grade. However, things, looking back, weren't that normal. I would come back, and my mom would tell me that so-and-so had been at the house and that we had to burn such and such books. I'm like, okay, we have to burn such and such books. Oh, someone else came by the house and said that we had to get rid of all our furniture. I'm like, okay, we have to get rid of all our furniture. And I also learned that the mafia was out again, after us. I'm like, I don't know who the mafia is, but okay. If my mom says they're after us, that's fine. We had at that time a Rabbit, a orange Volvo thing. It was stick shift. I remember one day she picks me up from school, which was very odd because usually I would walk the 3 miles to school, walk the 3 miles. We lived in an apartment, all black neighborhood. I remember growing up loving how strong the community was with the black folks, and I was like, God, just make me black. Probably one of the few light-colored kids praying that. But to me, it wasn't about the money. It was about that Mr. Johnson, if he saw I needed food, he'd feed me. If I saw Frank Jones and he knew I needed a ride because I had to carry my trumpet to school, he'd give me a ride. It meant that Jennifer and Jackie, these two twins, if they knew I didn't have any friends to hang out with on a Friday night, that they would just bring me into their house. It didn't matter that they had 12 kids spending the night in the same room. It was still fun. It was family. So anyway, my mom picks me up from school and she goes, the mafia, they found out where we are, we have to go to Austin. I'm like, okay, your mom says the mafia's after you, that's fine. So as you can guess, I think what happened, and I know it now, I didn't know it then, but my mom had suffered from PTSD. And eventually she'd be diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. I just saw my mom last week. She actually lived with us. And we lived at West Point for 5 years. She was fine while she was medicated, and then our family went back to Houston. She stayed at home. She didn't take her medication. She came back, and it just was not going to be good to have her in the house when my kids were younger. And so I took her and admitted her to a mental hospital. I went to Kentucky Fried Chicken, ordered the big bucket of original recipe, ate the whole bucket by myself. So I never go eat Kentucky Fried Chicken anymore. I also learned from my mom when we were living on the streets of Austin, Texas, that the government was poisoning coffee. So I don't drink coffee. And you can imagine, I don't drink Coors beer. I don't even drink beer. In fact, anytime, I'm an avid sports fan. Whenever a Coors commercial gets on, I kind of have to leave the room because I'm still kind of ticked off about that. What happened with the Coors company is they went and hire Hispanics, and I think they've come back, they've been a little bit better, but Coors used to sponsor one of the biggest organizations of the KKK. This was back early 1900s, like I said. I think the company's changed, I don't know, but for me, not drinking Coors beer. All right. So if anything has happened to you today, maybe I've changed your, I don't know anyone who loves Coors beer, but anyway, I'm trying to show you that if you talk to someone and they're really passionate and angry about something, ask them why. Because if I'm at a party and people are drinking Coors beer, I'm not going to stand up and say, oh, this is what Coors beer happened. However, I just don't do it. And I ask, if you learn why someone doesn't do something, respect it, because they might have a story behind the why. And we want everyone to just kind of be happy and jovial and nice, but sometimes when you get something, oppressed by something, it causes a little fierceness. It causes a little ticked offness, and that's okay. If you're talking with someone and they get angry, listen, sit with that, find out what's behind that. It's okay. I got off a little subject here. So my mom, I saw her last week. I was at West Point for a reunion. And she's at a home that we put her in. It's not the best. It's in downtown Middletown. It's hard dropping her off there. I try to send her money, but she says she never gets the mail. People take the money out. Try to give her new clothes. She said people take the clothes, but if I buy clothes with flowers on them, the people don't like that kind of thing, so buy her clothes with flowers because she can wear that. And of course, I'm falling for this. In the same sentence, she tells me she has to share a bathroom with someone, that every morning her roommate puts a rattlesnake in the toilet. And then I'm like, okay, I just did it again. I got reeled into her reality and trying to fix it. But I have to remember, it is her reality. And folks that are mentally ill, it's like working with someone that's been assaulted. Maybe all the facts aren't accurate, but to them, it's their reality, and to sit with that. So for my mom, she asked me if I send her money to send her a loaf of bread and put it inside the loaf of bread. So that's what I'll be doing. I will be packaging money to my mom in a loaf of bread. And if it gets to her that way, then so be it. And it's hard. I'm hoping to bring my mom here. I'm thankful for Lutheran Family Services. I'm going to try to put her in the Emmanuel home. So maybe, prayerfully, next summer she'll be here. My father, what happened was he got remarried. I was an only child. All of a sudden I had 6 stepbrothers, 3 stepbrothers, 3 stepsisters. When my mom, eventually she got arrested by the police, put in a halfway home, so I was sent to go live with my father. Things didn't go well, but as you can imagine, long story short, I ran away from home to Estes Park. Now, if you've ever been to Estes Park, which I think many have, if you've ever been to the Stanley Hotel, I rode my bike from Boulder, Colorado to the Stanley Hotel. I lived underneath the hotel for 2 weeks. As a homeless person, you get to be very resourceful, and I would learn when meals were over. Eventually, sometimes I would get the wait staff uniform, and I would collect the food and then take it down to my little abode. I love it when people order room service, because nobody eats all their food for room service, so you go and collect the trays. And my family drives them nuts, because they'll tell you this day, if I'm in a hotel and I see room service, I will pick up to see if there's still food there. I mean, it's just ingrained in me. And if I'm at a restaurant and people leave and they leave food there, I'll go over. Maybe I'll take it, maybe I won't. My family's like, oh, there's Mom, scrounging again. And if you've ever gone out to eat with me, the chances of me forgetting my wallet when I eat out with you is, it's not conscious, but I think it's subconscious, because to have someone else pay for your meal, it's still something, as someone that grew up on the streets, that's just ingrained in you. Right now, my biggest funder for my meals is my boss. Jane can tell you that she's paid for a lot of my meals. And my husband will tell you that at restaurants I do like to look at what other people are eating, and if I can strike up a conversation with them and say, oh, so is that good? Most of the time people say, yes, would you like to try? Now, they don't expect you to say yes, but if someone offers me something, I'm taking it. Yeah, you do. You become shameless when you live on the streets. I know, is it Brene Brown? She's got the big, what's her big book? It's Daring Greatly, right. She talks about shame. Now, I have no shame. And if you teach me or watch me teach Zumba, you'll see that. I have no shame. But something that comes up. Anyway, back to my dad. So I get arrested by the police, and I get put in foster care. And the foster care was an interesting experience, because my foster parent, Danny, I actually knew, because when I was living with my dad, I wasn't getting any money, and I learned how to deal drugs. And he was the snowman, is what we called him. He ran a burrito stand on the outdoor mall, and I would deliver, and I would get paid really well. I was making almost $1,000 a week as a 15, 16-year-old. And so I had it, as you talked about, I had it going on. Or I guess it was Candace that said I had it going on. Ironically, my foster dad was Danny, who was owning the burrito stand. Ironically, my foster mother, Susanna, was about as evangelical as you could get. And I had little Marcos and little Danny. Marcos was probably about 3 years old. Danny at the time was first grade. And she would take us to church Wednesdays and Sundays. And it was a Azusa Street-based church. You probably heard of the Marantha Singers, and it was a wonderful church that met in an abandoned liquor store between Boulder and Denver. And one of those nights, I don't know what happened, but there was a speaker, his name was Lonnie Frisbee. It was a Calvary chapel, and Lonnie Frisbee was talking, and he was saying, oh, the Holy Spirit's over there, and the people would just fall down. And then he'd say, oh, the Holy Spirit's over there. The people would just fall down. And I was wearing, I remember I did steal a little bit. I was wearing an Izod sweater. What I would do is I would ask my friends at school, I was going to school by this time, like what clothes they would like. They would show me, and I'd get it for them, and then I'd give them a big discount. So I was making money that way. As a kid, when you have nothing and you see the opportunity to get something, you take advantage of it. And so I was a thief, I was a drug dealer, and I remember I was wearing this blue sweater, it was an Izod, the little alligator, and all of a sudden I thought to myself, man, I don't know what the Holy Spirit is, but I don't want that Holy Spirit around me. And all of a sudden the speaker just stops, looks at me, I'm like 3 rows back, and says, why don't you want the Holy Spirit on you? And he pulls me up in front of everybody, and I don't really remember what happened. But he puts his hand on me, and boom, I collapse. And I try to get up. There's no one holding me down. I can't get up. And eventually they take me to the prayer room, and he anoints me. And I don't know what you believe about the Holy Spirit. I don't know if you're charismatic. I don't know if you're Methodist. No. But to me, that happened. I don't know exactly what happened, but for all I know, he had a taser and I got tased. I mean, I don't know. But I changed after that. I didn't deal drugs anymore. I didn't steal anymore. My profanity was pretty rampant. If you know me today, you probably won't hardly ever hear me cuss. I mean, it was this transformational change. When my mom and I were on the streets, we went to a Presbyterian church, and I remember those folks, they would let us shower there, they would let us sleep there, they would give us food. As a minister today, I know we have tons of programs, and we probably have tons of kind people that come by the church, but I can't look someone in the eye that asks for help, because I know when I needed help, even though I was not the greatest of people, someone helped me. Just Friday, yesterday, coming to the church, had a woman here who needed money. She said her mother, 50 years old, had just passed away from a massive heart attack, and she needed money. Her tank was full to go to, I think it was Rockport, Missouri, but she didn't have enough money to come back. So gave her money for gas, Hy-Vee card. I don't know if she really needed it or not. I noticed when I was coming into the church, there's a gentleman down at the corner of Cass and Dodge. I walked down there, his name was Donald. He said he was at the Sienna Francis house, but he was out and needed money. I don't know what he was using the money for, but gave him some money. And of course, I came in Friday because I'm supposed to preach tomorrow, and I was supposed to write my sermon. And this is what God always does. I always say God is in the interruptions. I'm trying to write this sermon, and I'm like, okay, God, I'm going to write. I haven't even taken a shower yet, okay? And a gentleman comes by. He's been here before, named Lawrence. And Lawrence, he's had some rough times, a former vet, and he came to tell me he got a job, and he was so excited and so thankful, and but he needed some money to time until he got his first paycheck. I'm like, okay. And then another gentleman came by who would help, gave me 4 $1 bills, and he goes, this church has helped me, and I want to give back. This is all I have. And I'm like, who needs to write a sermon? That preaches right there. And I just go back to people's stories. But I know we got to look at the bigger cause. One of the things I actually do now is I teach online, and I'm also an online chaplain for the American Public University System. It's also American Military University System. We have about 85,000 students who are military or in the police force, firefighters. And our growing rate of population of students on the online environment is increasing who are homeless, and they're able to find places to teach online. And so what I try to do is get a little bit of what's going on and connect them with someone in their community that can reach out and give them a little bit of support. what I do as a chaplain is I'll just try to give them hope, because I think if you plant just one little grain of hope into someone, that can be so important. Trying to empower someone so that their identity isn't as a homeless person. And I know we use these terms, poor, homeless, but that isn't their identity. If you can give them an identity as someone who is a mother, a father, a student. I listened to TED Talks, and I recently listened to a gal, I can't remember her name, but she's in Philadelphia, and she started a running club for the homeless. And people say, hey, homeless people don't run, but she started this club, and now people gather and run, and she puts this big chart on the wall for the guys, and it talks about their times, how much they're improving, and she made them sign a dedication form that you will meet at this corner in Philadelphia on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 6 in the morning. And so now these guys identify themselves as a teammate, as a runner. They're not identified anymore as being in the homeless shelter. I mean, no one comes up to me and says, oh, Cynthia, you're the homeful person. We don't identify like that, and we've got to kind of change. Instead of calling them homeless, I know we have to kind of have some kind of adjective there, but they are our neighbors. Everyone is our neighbor. And so kind of what I want to challenge you with, if, let's say we meet at our next poverty forum in a year, and I ask you to take out that sheet of paper and write down 5 names of people whose stories you know. It doesn't have to be someone that's on the streets or on a shelter, but just 5 people that maybe have it a little bit more challenging or rougher than you. Would you be able to do that? If you wanted to start with one person, that would be great. I mean, I estimate, I'm horrible at counting. I'm going to just go with there's 112 people in the room. I never run those jelly bean contests, but let's just say 112. If each one of us just kind of adopted one person, that could make a huge difference. And this is one thing, if I could do parenting all over again, there would be so many things I would do with my kids. But one thing, thankfully, our kids really role model what we do, and my kids see that when I see a homeless person, what I try to do is park the car and go talk to them, because it's hard in your car to really have a conversation with them. But my kids, if I pass someone like, Mom, stop, we got to go talk to that person. And I'm really excited that if they haven't learned anything from me, at least they've learned that. And I remember one year for Lent, what I tried to do was leave for whatever destination I had 20 minutes early. And I said, God, whatever those 20 minutes I can do, send me to someone. And I was just more attuned to people. I wasn't in a hurry. I do get flipped off a lot because I actually drive the speed limit. And if someone flips me off, I say a prayer for them. And I'm like, God bless them, because I guess they're not having a good day. Now, sometimes I am kind of an airhead driver, so I probably deserve it. But yesterday, what really captured me about Lawrence was his attitude. And you probably heard the phrase, attitude of gratitude. And he was worried he's going to just be doing housekeeping at the VA hospital. And I'm like, Lawrence, don't worry, because your attitude is so infectious. I love being around you. And your boss, they're going to love having you around. I have a feeling you're going to be able to keep your job, because he's so thankful. And when we are thankful, we're able to give. And I don't think that we can give if we don't love. And those that are homeless, they might not know how to love. I still have a struggle with making eye contact with people, because it was so ingrained into me being on homeless to never make eye contact with people, because people don't want that. I still struggle with that. I still struggle with being able to say I love you to people, because it's just something you didn't do. Even though I'm Hispanic and my brother and Abuelita, they were very loving. But when you come from the streets, your feelings, your emotions, you just got to be careful with these things. You have to safeguard them. You learn that you have to be in control. On the good side of that is I've learned that when you drink and you lose control, that could be a fatal error when you live on the streets. If you did drugs, that could be a fatal error when you live on the streets. So maintaining control and being aware. If you see folks on the streets, and I was on the streets because my mom was mentally ill, The statistics for veterans is horrible. If you go to D.C. much, the homeless population in D.C., it's embarrassing. And I forgot who was talking about committee work and everything. I remember I lived in Northern Virginia when President Obama, his first inauguration. And I don't know if this was true or rumored, but they said that they put 6,000 homeless folks on buses out of the area that day. I know that they allowed the homeless shelters to be open that day. I mean, in his first inauguration, it was freezing that day. I mean, it was bitterly cold. It was dangerously cold. But in D.C., every time I go back, it just astounds me. We're talking a block away from the White House, tons of homeless folks, and many of them are veterans. And if you can imagine what it's like to serve your country and then to kind of be an outcast, it really breaks one's heart. And folks that are visiting the United States, they come to our country and they're just flabbergasted that we allow folks to not have a home. I mean, they're like, can't you help out there? And I don't know what the programs are about. I'm just a pastor. I try to give people hope. That's what my calling is. I do serve on the Department of Defense Committee. It's Department Defense Advisory Committee on Women in the Services. And that committee's been around since 1951, trying to get equality for women. When I joined the committee 4 years ago, we wanted to put women into the specialty courses like SEAL training and Ranger School. It's taken a long time. We had 2 women graduate from Ranger School back, I think it was August the 21st, and we just had a 37-year-old woman. She basically had to go through Ranger School twice, but Lisa just graduated on Friday. And you know, I think of all the women that are not equal because they don't have the same training as men, and it takes a lot of passion, it takes a lot of work. But I think eventually we can change things. And again, I see a lot of folks here, great folks, loving folks, and many of you do know one person. If you know one person, maybe you can go for 2. And we all have, I heard it one time, there's 3 things that you can never take back. You can never take back a lost opportunity, you can never take back the spoken word, and you can never take back the spent arrow. I think that phrase must go back to medieval times. But our words are so powerful, and if you don't want to give money to someone and you don't have time to take someone for food, just give them a nice word, because that will be so much value to them. My last story, before I close, I went to school. I had to go to prep school because I had a police record before I went to West Point. And it was in New Jersey. It was the prep school, and we were able to go to New York City quite a bit. And I would go with my friends to New York City, and I just have a passion. I'm so drawn to homeless, to people living in the streets. And by Penn Station, it's not there anymore, but there used to be a huge shanty town. And when we would take the bus down, I would love to go talk to them because they were like my people, you know. I could relate to them. And one of the women, her name was Gloria, she's like, I want you to come hear me sing. I'm like, okay, where are you singing? She goes, I sing at Grand Central Station every day at 4:30. I'm like, okay. And so 4:30, I get my friends, they're like, why are we going to Grand Central Station? I'm like, you know, come on, guys, let's go to Grand Central Station. I have never heard a more beautiful voice. Gloria, that day, and I think most days, she sang Amazing Grace. And she had, I don't know if you remember Dunkin' Donuts, they didn't have the flat boxes they used to have, they were more like a shoe box. And she would have her Dunkin' Donuts box. And I don't know how much money she made, but it was probably maybe $40, $50. This was back in the 80s. And what would she do with that money? She'd take it back to the Penn Station community, and she would say, take what you need. And homeless folks, people that don't have anything, whatever they have, they will find a way to give their little bit to those who have less than they have. And so I think about all I have. And could I be doing more? Oh, yeah, I could be doing a lot more. But I know that I try to do what I'm called to do, And for right now, that's being a minister, it's trying to raise my kids, and hopefully if there's anything I've said, it's that you can just empower someone with a hug or a word of encouragement. Thanks. Went to the Air Force Academy, and I was told that my eyesight, remember I told you about my loving stepbrothers? Well, one day they decided to be really mean. They put me in a closet, put me in the closet with firecrackers, and it messed up my eyesight. So my eyesight isn't that great. I'm wearing contacts right now. And so I didn't get a waiver to go to the Air Force Academy. I remember in high school, senior year, my counselor at the time, really, this is his name, Ronald McDonald, I get called over the loudspeaker, and I'm like, oh, great, what did I do? And I go down there, and everyone's like looking at me, and he's holding the phone. He's like, it's Senator Benson, Lloyd Benson. And Lloyd Benson said, look, I can't get you right into West Point, but I can get you to the prep school because they have problems with my police record. I'm like, okay, I'll take it. But long story short, it was always a dream of mine. I have my uncle, he was class of 67 from West Point, and he wore his West Point ring, and he has this great story. He was shot down in Vietnam, and he learned when their plane got hit that you had to take off your jewelry to get evicted. So he put it in the plane, and he got shot down. He made it back to friendly lines, and like 6-7 years later, his ring comes back in the mail. To this day, he doesn't know how it came back. So as a kid, I heard that story. I'm like, wow, I really want to go to West Point. So that was always a dream of mine, and when I was arrested, I had a parole officer named Gus, and he told me I would never amount to anything. I told him I wanted to go to West Point. He just laughed at me. And, you know, anytime someone challenges me, oh, get out of my way, because I'll do anything I can to prove you wrong. So
That's great.